All right. Yeah, thanks very much for having me, everyone. Um, my name is Chris, and as I was saying to Bruno earlier, I'm an independent computer programmer. I've been writing software since I was young, and I've been using mostly ClojureScript since 2015. I've worked as a freelancer since sort of 2003, and these days I'm dividing my time between open source, freelance consulting, and building micro businesses. So if you are looking for commercial ClojureScript support or development, please feel free to get in touch. I'd like to say a special thanks before I start to Clojures Together and everybody who contributes. The funding has helped me work on Sitefox in the first quarter of this year. Whoops. So the first question, I guess, would be, what is Sitefox? In a nutshell, it's a framework for building web backends using ClojureScript that run on the Node.js runtime. Oops. Okay. So the traditional setup in the Clojure community is to run Clojure on the JVM, on the Java virtual machine for the backend, and ClojureScript only in the browser. Sitefox switches this up by running ClojureScript on the backend as well, on the Node VM instead of on the Java VM. So effectively, you get the two environments closer together in terms of interop and libraries, and you get access to the same JavaScript NPM libraries on the backend as you have on the front end. So it's full stack ClojureScript, ClojureScript in the browser, ClojureScript on Node on the server as well. So Sitefox is also, it's a relatively opinionated batteries included framework, like Django on Python. Batteries included means it tries to do a lot of stuff for you so that you can just get on with building the application logic. So it's similar to Laravel on PHP or Ruby on Rails. It glues together a curated selection of Node libraries to cover the common set of features required by modern web backends. And the goal is to get your backend up and running with the basic things you need so you can get on with building the application logic. So why does Sitefox even exist? So in 2015, a friend introduced me to ClojureScript during a game jam. This is the game we built, Alien Forest Explorer. I didn't realize at the time, but this weird language with alien braces would now begin to replace the other programming languages in my life. And fast forward a few years, I was experimenting with a few online micro business ideas, trying to generate some income from side projects. And by now I was frequently building front ends with ClojureScript, but I still relied on Django and Python for my backend code because that's what I knew best. And I couldn't really find anything in the Clojure world that was equivalent to Django in the sense of getting up and running very quickly with the basic things you need. And I found the key to building micro businesses is to build a lot of them quickly. So fail early, fast, and often. Most business ideas do fail, so you don't want to invest too much time into any individual idea. You need to fail sort of like fast and cheap. Django gave me good leverage to build fast, but the problem was I'd become quite addicted to Clojure. As you know, Clojure is an onion with many layers of developer-friendly features, which lead to less bugs and faster build time. And the braces are just the start, obviously. And by comparison, working in Python on Django was starting to feel quite painful, having to switch between the front-end code, which was bug-free, quick to develop, felt easy, and then switch to the back-end code in Python where there was no library loading and that kind of thing. And I'd sort of experimented with Highlang, which is a Clojure-like syntax for Python, but it was too far removed from real Clojure, and the language changed too much between versions. At the same time, I had experience with Node.js, and I saw that many of the features of web backend needs were now available in off-the-shelf libraries on the NPM package repository, which is Node's package repository. So I started tinkering around and building some personal projects and client projects using a combination of ClojureScript, but running on Node and using NPM libraries. And during the course of that, I kind of discovered what the good Node libraries were. So in early 2021, I made the leap and pulled the common code out of those projects into a new library, and that was the birth of Sitefox. And for me, that meant at last I could build everything in ClojureScript and also get a Django-style head start on every project. So, whoops, I've covered up, this slide has actually covered up the title of the slide. It's quite, but anyway, I started writing web software commercially in 2003. Back then we were using Perl with flat text files as the database. And so, yeah, this part of the talk is all about what Sitefox actually can do for you. So what its actual functions are. So there were a few things back in the Perl days with flat text files that a web backend needed to do. Basically, serve HTML, including templates, handle different URLs and routes, process submitted forms, send emails, store data that the user submitted or other types of data, keep track of users, so sessions and authentication, and finally logging. So after Perl, that was sort of like in the 2000s, this new amazing, beautiful language called PHP came along. And we discovered there were a few things that web backends needed to do then with PHP, and PHP had built-in functions for them. So again, they were serve HTML, including templates, handle different URLs and routes, process submitted forms, send emails, store data, keep track of users in sessions and authentication, and logging. Yeah, so then a bit more time passed, and sometime later, a nice little nugget of a language called Python emerged. It was very nice not to have to read through the intense syntax when debugging. So we quickly started building our web backends in Python, and people put together a thing called Django because they discovered there's only a few things a web backend needs to do, which are serve HTML, templates, handling different URLs and routes, processing submitted forms, send emails, storing data, keeping track of users with session authentication and logging. And then a bunch of other languages, Ruby and Java, they had similar kinds of framework coming out, which basically had the exact same feature set. So by the time, fast forward to 2019, 2021, and Sitefox, it was pretty clear what I had to do. Serve HTML, including templates, handle different URLs and routes, process submitted forms, send emails, store data, keep track of users, and logging. And so, yeah, that's basically what Sitefox does. That's the feature set. And so in that sense, it's designed for serving web backends. And so who is Sitefox intended for? Well, like many web open source projects, I primarily built Sitefox to serve my own immediate needs, which means at the moment it's ideal for people like myself who like to self-host, get things up and running quickly, and then are operating at probably like indie scale, I'd call it, maybe with users in the thousands rather than the millions. So that said, Node and Express are particularly efficient, and I think they scale pretty well. I haven't spent a lot of time deploying to CDN and high-scale platforms like Heroku and Netlify, but this is something I want to use the ClojureScript, the Clojurist Together funding for, and something I'm kind of actively looking at the moment. And since Sitefox sites are just Node.js backends, they will run on those platforms. I know that already. But the work that I need to do is just to do some testing and make sure everything works properly. But if you want to deploy yourself to your own VPS, then Sitefox is ideal. And I know that works because I do it myself. To give you an idea of scale, I can tell you that I've got multiple Sitefox websites running on a single DigitalOcean VPS with a fairly low spec. I think it's like a $12 a month DigitalOcean VPS. And my site Rogel.com, which is a video game, gets thousands of games played per month. So that's quite high traffic. And another site I have, dopeloop.ai, has tens of thousands of users per month. So yeah, both of those together, show that Sitefox can serve at least tens of thousands of users per month without any kind of issue. The box never has high load or anything like that. So yeah, in short, if you like the idea of building web stuff with ClojureScript and you like the Node ecosystem and you're good at building at indie scale, then Sitefox could be a good fit. Yeah, so now I'm going to get to how you can try Sitefox. And so I'm going to actually unshare the slides and do a little bit of an interactive demo. So let me just share my terminal instead. What I'm going to do is, so if you have Node installed yourself, you can follow along with pretty easily with npm, etc. But if you don't have Node installed, then I recommend you use nvm, which is a Node version manager, to install Node. And the first thing we're going to do is just npm init. And if you know Leiningen and the Leiningen templates, then npm init works in a similar way. So instead of Leiningen templates, you have these Node create scripts. And I have a Node create script called Sitefox shadow full stack. So this command is quite simple. You just type npm init Sitefox shadow full stack my app. Now you don't have to have the Sitefox shadow full stack script installed yourself, because npm will install it for you as it goes. And I mean, without further ado, I guess I'll run that. And so I already had it installed, so it doesn't have to download anything. But basically, it creates my app and it sets it up as a Sitefox backend and front end full stack app. So what we have here is Sitefox running on the server, and the front end is just a standard kind of shadow cljs front end with reagent. So Sitefox relies quite heavily on reagent and React for the server-side rendering. So that means you can reuse components in the front end and the back end, which I'll show you in a second. So if we just follow these instructions and say cd my app and then npm install, so this will just install the dependencies from npm. And where it installs those from is npmjs.com, which is the package repository for Node scripts. And then once that's done, we can run this final command, make watch, which will actually spin up Sitefox, and it'll spin up the backend server compiling and the front end server. So you get two different shadow CLJS targets. You get one which is building the server and one which is building the client. And I guess the big difference with ClojureScript, with Clojure standard type of applications, is there's no Clojure here. There's just ClojureScript. So your front end and your back end are both ClojureScript. So that's just compiling. And what I'll do is I'll actually start editing. My app server, so we can take a look at the actual server code. The file is not very long. It's only 47 lines long, and you can see that there's basically this route here. So this setup routes function sets up the routes. You've got two different routes here: my page, API example, and /. And these just render different routes. So API example is a function that just returns this this value here, and my page is this reagent form, and that gets rendered on the server side. So if we load up the page now that it's serving, it's launched the server. These errors here are actually just it waiting for the build to finish, because it's run the dev server, but it hasn't finished outputting everything. And so this is the app that runs. And this is at the moment, this page is a standard reagent shadow CLJS front end page. So you can click this and you see live updates. But if we click either of these links, they take us to a backend route. So if we click on this, on the my page route, so this one takes us to /my page. And you can see this is my page, this is a server rendered page. And if we go and look at the server, and we can modify this, you can see there's an h1 tag my page. This is a server rendered page. And then we'll just put the word hello on the end here and save it. And then this page, you can now see that it has hello. So that's rendered. That's a reagent form rendered entirely on the back end rather than the front end. So if we come back to my app here, you can also edit this front end UI by editing in the source my app. You can find two different files, server.cljs and UI, my app UI. And if we edit the UI, again, you can see it's this is the front end code. So this doesn't run on the server; it runs on the front in the browser. And we can just modify this. So at the moment, the button says "click me," but we can change that to click me please, and it just updates as you would expect with any regular Shadow CLJS. Yeah, and so the other thing I should quickly look at is this API example. Obviously, a common pattern is to have a front end, which then makes requests to a JSON backend. And so we can do the same thing here with this JSON API example, just by visiting the URL. And if we change that to, if we change the API example to return hello 12, then it will, when we reload, it'll update in the backend here. And so that's, again, entirely server rendered. And, it's quite a concise way of, this can all obviously be generated programmatically or whatever you like. Yeah, and so that's the basic of getting Sitefox up and running on your own local. It's just that npm create, and then you can start editing those files yourself. There is also a make file at the top level, which will do a build. So you can go, there's a README which explains how to run everything, and you can just type make, and what it does is build into the build folder. So it builds both a server.js file that you can run with Node, and it'll also build the front-end files that go into build/public, and they will be served by the server.js. So you can pretty much, so that artifact that gets built into build, you can pretty much deploy that to any Node server that will serve it for you. So for example, if you're using Netlify or Heroku or something like that, or if you're self-hosting, you can copy it up however you like. So I won't wait for that build to compile, but yeah, basically it builds the whole artifact into the build directory. So I'll just switch back to, so it bundles Kiev. And what this does is allow, so you can have this, you set an environment variable specifying the database you'd like to connect to. By default, it uses a local SQLite database. So again, it's very quick to get up and running. You don't need to even provision a database on your local. You can just start writing values directly into SQLite. And the great thing about Kiev is you don't even actually need to build any kind of relational system yet. If you want, you can just start using it straight away, because what Kiev does is it wraps traditional relational databases in a key value store. So you can kind of go, I want to create a new table called SumTable, and then I just want to set this key to this value, right? So, that's a very quick way to get up and running. And then you can do, likewise, you can say, I want to get from the table this key, and then print out that value. And I found that provides when you're trying to spin up a site very quickly just to test out some idea, you don't want to be writing like database table specifications or whatever. You just actually want to put a bunch of data in there, see how it's going, see if anyone wants to use this. And then once you get up and running, you can kind of like bail out, and you can actually get access to the underlying client. So if you've set Kiev up with the Postgres database, you can then make a Postgres query on there, and then you can start building proper tables and things like that. But the idea is you can get it up and running quickly without kind of committing too much to an idea. And then later, if you need to, you can kind of like upgrade to a proper database. For my own sites with kind of like thousands of users, I found that actually the key value idea, it performs fine. I'm just like, my users are pretty much isolated. There's no like social sharing or like groups or anything like that. And pretty much each user just has a data bucket that I dump their data into in the database and then load it back out again. I mean, that's simplified, but and I found that the key value thing does work well there. The thing that Sitefox probably needs most at the moment is user feedback. So if you run it and you get stuck or you find something isn't working properly, do let me know. I'm keen to hear about any issues so that I can resolve them to improve Sitefox, and I'd much appreciate that. Yeah, so that's all of my talk. Thanks very much for having me, and I wanted to say again a special thanks to Clojures Together for supporting work on Sitefox, quite an experimental idea. So it's nice to